Well, let's now turn back to that news coming in from the Vatican. U.S. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who of course has taken the papal name of Leo XIV, is the new head of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, the 69-year-old from Chicago has been unveiled at a window in the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Cardinal Proto-Deacon Dominic Mamberti announced the 267th Pontiff, who of course succeeds Pope Francis, who died on April 21st. Now, Pope Leo XIV becomes the first Pontiff from the U.S. Well, for more on this, we're now speaking to Philip Crowther. He joins us now in Rome. Certainly exciting times for the Catholic Church now that the search for the next leader has come to an end. Any surprises with the choice?
Yeah, I think we can safely say that this is a surprise. Cardinal Robert Prevost was not among the top 5 or maybe even the top 8 group of contenders. He was talked about, but largely the fact that he was a citizen of the United States, I think, was seen as one of the reasons why in this era of political upheaval he might not be elected Pope. But in the end, it went quite fast, didn't it? 4 rounds of voting only. That is faster than Pope Francis in 2013. That is something that is pretty important. Robert Prevost then becomes the first Pope from North America, of course also the first Pope from the United States. But he is a dual citizen. He has spent a considerable amount of time in Peru as a missionary, and also, by the way, spent a few years right here where we are standing. This is essentially the headquarters of the Augustinian congregation. He is an Augustinian, and he is seen pretty much as a continuation of Pope Francis, as someone whose politics, if that's what you want to call them, are pretty much aligned with those of his predecessor during the previous 12 years. He's seen as somebody who's very calm and very measured, and maybe even somebody who was being prepared, or at least was given the support of Pope Francis in the years before his death. He is somebody who was the head of the very powerful Office of Bishops here in the Vatican. In other words, he knows the Vatican well. He knows the leadership of the Catholic Church well. It is a name that came as a surprise here, yes, but that went down very well. He then is Pope Leo XIV. From now on, the 267th Pope, 69 years of age.
And as you just said there, it went down very well. But what can you tell us about the mood there right now? How are people reacting?
Yeah, it was quite the scene, I've got to say. I was in St. Peter's Square when the white smoke first billowed out of the chimney atop the Sixtine Chapel. That was a surprise too. People were taking photos of the seagulls that were on the chimney at the time, and then all of a sudden that grey smoke at first, but then very clearly became white smoke thereafter. That led to cheers, to scenes of celebration in the square. I saw people hugging, even crying, and thousands of people literally running toward the square so that they would make it in time for the announcement of who was going to be the next Pope and what his chosen name was going to be, and then of course his first words as Pope. Those were made here on the loggia. That's the balcony you can see behind me on St. Peter's Basilica.
Certainly exciting times. Now, you sort of alluded to the fact that he came up under the former Pope Francis. So what should we now expect from Pope Leo XIV?
Well, essentially, I think you can expect largely a continuation of what you saw during the papacy of Francis. Now, what that means is somebody who was open toward what Pope Francis called going toward the peripheries. In other words, trying to get more people into the Catholic Church rather than losing members right now, going out to continents and countries where maybe the Catholic Church doesn't have a particularly strong presence, maybe concentrating on Asia a little more, maybe on Latin America. Pope Leo XIV, after all, spent a lot of time in Peru. I think politically you'll see some very clear similarities here between Francis and Leo XIV, but in a more measured way, if you will. Now, maybe the elephant in the room, if you will, is what does this mean when a cardinal from the United States is elected Pope while Donald Trump is President of the United States? I don't think it has anything to do with that, but that is one reason why a lot of people were saying this might not be the right time to elect an American Pope. Well, in the end, we have the first Pope from the United States. He is not seen as particularly anti or pro-Trump, but seen as someone who is relatively liberal and reform-minded within the Catholic Church.
Well, as